What I tell you, there's always more Cosmonarchy, and that's true today as well. We're going to some interesting maps in this set here between Hamster and Newt. There were actually a couple of matches prior to this set, but two of them were not very cast-worthy. One of them was actually not meant to be submitted at all. Therefore, we are starting here with 6 replays. Who is going to win the majority of these games, or are we going to see a tie? We're just going to have to find out, starting with Cocytus, a map by the Shambler. It's going to be Newt in the bottom left, Hamster in the bottom right. This is a 2-spawn map. Don't let your eyes deceive you. These are not spawns. They are just maps, or parts of the map that you can expand into for neutral-ish expansions. Now, Hamster has struggled so far in the set of games. Again, I have some context that the viewers will not, because some of those matches didn't end up making it into the cut. We have the Scribe moving a little bit around here. He might be going for, like, maybe some sort of forward pylon. Yep, there it is. This is interesting. Okay. And, you know, it's kind of, like, outside of where you would put a Mason, because your Worker Scout's going to probably come through here. So this could be a very blazingly fast match to open things up. So while I have the time to tell you, let me just mention that, indeed, we have an invitational coming up. We have invited some high-level players from Brood War. Some names that maybe, if you're an aficionado like myself, you may recognize. Some amateurs, if you want to call them that. That term is weird because amateur actually means, like, hey, you're pretty good, and, you know, you're able to, like, maybe stream and make you know, decent money off of that. Maybe not a living, but, like, enough to supplement, you know, maybe buy your groceries or something, and all that stuff. So, you know, it's not nothing. It's not like amateur as in, like, oh, you know, I could have been picked up for Pop Warner in football or whatever. So, like, that's not exactly what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who are, maybe it is like actually like the college football or like really good high school football or something like that. But obviously it takes a lot longer to get better at good enough in Starcraft. So not exactly the main focus here. So yep, indeed, this will go unscouted. But yeah, so some people from that neck of the woods. Actually, honestly, I really like this tempo here from Hamster. He's adding a second gate to the main, to the middle of the map, and there's a quarry coming. So this is actually a pretty good punish play for him because, okay, sure, the 1 Legionnaire versus 1 Vulture, that fight can get pretty messy. But in theory, you pop a mine, the Legionnaire shouldn't get too much damage. What's really going to matter here is if the second Vulture can make, you know, enough tempo to keep up with the 2-gate production of Legionnaires. And actually, Newt is in a really awkward situation right now. He's going to go ahead and put an anchor down, but he was really far extended. I think Hamster could have maybe capitalized on that a little bit. We actually have a bit of a pull here, because obviously the Mason arriving over here in the main means that we know for sure. You know, Newt is no stranger to these kinds of cheesy all-ins. He knows for sure that there was a play coming there. So great reactions, and, you know, it does feel like maybe Hamster could have capitalized on that a little bit better, but Newt's just doing his due diligence, clearing everything there. The gates have not been arrived. The anchor canceled, so the Vulture is going to move out across the map. Actually, that is going to reveal... I love the little chase going on that side. Yeah, the Legionnaires at this point have the number to overwhelm the 2 Vultures, so you do have to watch out for that. Newt ended up losing just 1 or 2 Masons, it looks like, so really not the end of the world there. I think only 1 Mason. He is a little bit behind in terms of workers, but now he's screaming ahead thanks to the quarry that was finished. And the most important thing at this point for the game is that Hamster put some tempo on and some pressure on. He might be able to get the... I was going to say he might be able to go in and grab some kind of expansion or economic lead or something like that, but instead we just have another gateway coming down, the Scribe returning home to go back to mining, and he's going to eat the economic deficit and try to see if he can get into a good spot in the mid-game. Now, people who are watching these casts kind of back-to-back or whatever, maybe who have been here for a little bit and seen what Cosmonarchy has to offer, they might be aware that Newt is a player that can kind of peak in the early game and really be deadly. And that's exactly what happened in those early matches that didn't make it into the cut. So Newt essentially just went for, like, on Fata Morgana, there was like a Fulcrum all-in that was only, you know, I think the whole game was like 4 minutes long or something. And you know, Hamster wasn't able to make the cut. While the second game was a little bit more drawn out, but the match ended up going the way of Newt anyway, due to a Phalanx drop. And so that was a more interesting game. I would have maybe included that, but at this point, you know, oh boy, the mine, the Goliaths, the Vultures, just shredding the Legionnaires over here. But this is another thing to keep in mind, right? It's like, okay, you know, Newt can do some cheeky stuff in the early stages of the game, and that's exactly what he's doing right now. This is not Brood War. These Drakodons are not going to stay alive very long versus the onslaught of so many Vultures. We've got an offensive mine being placed. Zealot taking a lot of hits right now, and is even going to go ahead and confirm a stun and then thus a kill onto that Vulture. A Legionnaire finally being resounded over here. You do want to just get rid of the Vultures at this point, right? But it looks like right now Hamster is a bit more concerned with dealing with the Goliath. These units are very, very brittle at this stage. There was a Drakodon. It was sort of like idle in that whole fight, so Hamster's unit control could have, gotten the better of him in that situation. There you go, even popping the mine at the end of the day. Now, this might provoke Newt to charge off over there, but I think he's going to think better of it. Pulling multiple workers to repair. He recognizes that with the 2 gates in the middle of the map, he does need to worry about, prospective attacks. This Legionnaire going to get caught on the way out. Ice does give you a cliff deficit now, thanks to the work of DF, where he was able to essentially program in extended height levels. And then I was able to modify the terrain as a result. Some may remember Boscovine having all of those different height levels, and yeah, it didn't really look like it. So this is the problem, right? This is where Newt is in a bit of a pickle, because he's really only still producing off of 1 Fulcrum. So those losses earlier on, even though he traded more cost efficiently, he lost 3 out of 4 of his Vultures. He put some damage onto the Goliaths. This could end right about now, but I think maybe he can hold. I mean, he did thin the herd of the melee. It's just he's only got the 1 Goliath. He needs to pull more workers to defend. And yeah, sure, you got a great workers advantage, but this snowballs super heavily right now, and the treasury now taking some fire. That's going to slow down everything else. Pull the workers. This nullifies the worker advantage almost. We got a Hurakan being made to rend the armor. So many more Legionnaires just came in from the rally, and that's another thing. Hamster could definitely improve his rally points when he's playing Protoss, right? Like grab the gateway control group and just right click in the natural so that you don't have to constantly be looking back at it. But even so, like, that's super scary. This is essentially a containment, and the Nexus coming down now very late from Hamster. So this is his gambit. What we saw him earlier do, where he put down a 3rd gateway instead of worrying about trying to expand off the back of his pressure. He's looking to break Newt right here, right now. We've got Hurakans. We don't have any healing. We just have the repairman, but they're actually busy trying to attack the units. Great splash damage coming out of the Hurakans. That is eventually going to shred the Legionnaires. But look, that 1 Goliath is going to go down to sustained fire if Hamster wants to do it. Either way, he's satisfied with thinning the herd. He's satisfied with adding more and more economic damage by pulling the workers and draining the money. But he doesn't have that much right now. He's actually adding Hierophants. So I don't know how this is going to go, but I really like the theory behind it, because essentially in these fights that are taking a longer time and you have the repairs going, if you debuff the unit to make it less valuable, then it almost doesn't matter that it's staying alive so much. And so I think maybe that's the theory behind the Hierophant push. Also, you have to remember, our players are practicing with the new changes to the economy rate and all this other stuff. They're just trying to see what they can do. Now, I really like this cheeky play here, using the treasury as essentially a block. He's also got Masons blocking the path over there. That's going to be really frustrating for Hamster to deal with. And so in this situation, okay, now you've held. Now you've gone and done it. And, maybe you can kind of just try to contain on the even ground so you can't use the cliff advantage. But the treasury being repaired, okay, saturating out on 1 base. That's essentially what Newt is going to do here. And Hamster has to transition into a bit more of a macro game. He's going Ardent Authority on a very low economy situation here, right? So picking off some of these workers, again, like some of this is Fugazi because the workers are busy trying to repair or busy trying to do other things. But he still ends up pushing back the Strider army. No Zealots, no Legionnaires. Nothing to sort of frustrate the Goliaths themselves. Adding an anchor on the low ground now. Putting in an add-on now, finally getting a Vestry. This delayed the actual tech acquisition of Newt so much. And because he was only on the 1 ridge and 1 geyser, he wasn't really able to scale his tech power. But now he's going to transfer a bunch of his workers over, knowing that he's got way more than he needs to on the minerals, because that's, the diminishing returns of building more and more workers on 1 base. It is still intact in Cosmonarchy. It's just a little bit different how the rules work. And look at that. We've got an anchor. We've got a star pad. And it does look like with the 2nd quarry, we are going to see Newt try to power onto a high worker count at this stage. No embassy yet. Ardent Authority done, but, what is it going to make? Probably Architects? It's actually an Acantor, so we're going to need to see an embassy then. Like, you don't want to crawl the Acantor halfway across the map, or indeed all the way across the map in this particular case. But, it's not a bad shout. Versus Terran, I feel like the Acantor is a little bit less powerful, because the higher HP pool of the Mason means that it will take less splash damage. There is a fall off on the Acantor shell, so you have to keep that in mind. That's pretty consistent with other splashes. I do feel like maybe he could have even just tried to catch this Goliath. It sounds silly, but the Hierophant would have probably made it relatively immobile. Got nothing blinking on the gateway yet. There is indeed an embassy on the way. That's going to be a much-needed 3rd worker queue to get Hamster have some element of parity with this. But here's a Trojan. It is going to load up multiple Hurakans and multiple Goliaths. And this is kind of at the same time as the push is coming in. So this is the perfect time, Hamster doesn't know it, to attack. Because at this stage, he's forcing out a response. This Dracodon gonna reveal that there's really not that much up here. I mean, it was clearly a missed rally, but that ended up being pretty effective. And we have the Acantor standing defensively. It's just gonna be able to pop this up. Yes, sure, you've got some damage dealt, but you know, with the other problem here is that there's nothing at the main, right? And so this is going to frustrate Hamster's economy quite a bit, and probably do some damage, right? There's still 2 Hurricanes. The drills end up going, or the attack anyway ends up going, but this is still a lot of workers being killed. And so we still don't have any of these Hurricanes dying. One of them ends up decolliding finally, and there was a Dracodon that was able to finish, but it wasn't focusing down the Hurricanes, and that's what was dealing all the splash damage. So now we have a 24 worker advantage for our Terran player. While this was going on, there was no counterattack, nothing to make it so that, you know, Newt couldn't just focus entirely on microing the units against the workers. We did have an envoy. I'm not sure where that envoy went. Okay, it's chasing the Trojan over here, which is actually going to end up dying because it will fly into the Hierophant, and that slows it down with the on-hit. So that is over. There is not going to be a counter drop without a second investment into another Trojan, which I'm not sure Newt actually wants to make. He's trying to commit and chase down the Acantor, but again, the Hierophant's coming in real clutch, slowing down Goliaths, picking off these expensive units. Now the Acantor can just sit right over here and take pot shots down at the Masons. You know, he wants to unload on the high ground instead. Doesn't want to be attacked necessarily. Getting a couple of hits. You know, the reaction here a little bit slow from Newt, but again, the fall off helping him out massively. The Acantor is not going to be as useful versus Terran as it was versus Zerg when Hamster did it against V7. One-shot potential very, very different. I do like the idea of, oh, look at this. He's actually going to lift the Watchdog. That's dead. I was going to say I like the idea of trying to commit around that, because if that Watchdog gets set up, you can't use your Envoy nearly as well. Diving backwards. Goliath actually getting drawn out. That could have been a collapse. A little bit of a missed opportunity there. Can only fit one Acantor in the Envoy. Very different than in Starcraft 1. You're going to have an engagement over here to kill some of the Clerics. The force is getting a little bit confused over here. And a Zealot just wandering on in to draw some more fire and slow down some things. Unfortunately, some units are indeed getting bopped. But you can see here the Acantor able to shell the stockade from the high ground, or from the low ground, rather. This is a situation where just sitting in your 2 bases is not going to help you in this particular matchup nearly as well. I was waiting to see if there was another Trojan being made. Instead, it's an Anseal. That Envoy staying alive, seeing if it can make things happen. Got another Acantor on the front line here, and I just saw Hamster be thinking about taking a 3rd base behind this. So this is where, you know, that economic advantage that Newt still has with the extra workers is going to start to matter a little bit less, right? If the Acantor was able to shell maybe more valuable targets like the Masons that are making these... Oh no, it's dead! And he wasn't able to get the unload off in time, so there goes down one of the Acantors. This one is also going to die because it was just rallied in. That's a very expensive loss. Maybe Hamster is going to be a little bit angry about that and commit on top of it. But, you know, he might be able to break him. There's nothing in that secondary anchor. I think he realized that thanks to his Acantor walking in. Now the Anseal is nearly dead. It will eventually finally be focused down. We've got another Dracodon streaming on in. We've got more units sort of just idling around. Definitely could be added to the workflow. But at this stage, I think Hamster is going to be driven back by the Goliaths and the anchors on the high ground. Again, he could have maybe focused a little bit more on trying to finish the job over here. He's got more and more units rallying over. I talked about the rally points. Hamster could work on that because he wasn't rallying all of his Legionnaires into the front line in the early stages of the game. And, you know, at this stage, it feels like maybe he's corrected that a little bit too late. Now picking off yet another Goliath. There's only 5 of them over here. There is nothing in that anchor yet again. Nothing in any of these anchors at all. We've got Eidolons on the field now, thanks to the Covenant being added. That will help with the single target damage, which is exactly what Newt needs in this situation. But as of right now, he has lost a lot of units. He has, however, cleared the deck, so to speak. And it looks like the damage and the threat is over. Now, again, this is not one of our Empire class maps. This is a map that was tested out in the Invitational A, which is sort of like the underclass tournament. We didn't actually see anybody really using this low ground spot to attack and pressure the main. However, I don't know that it's necessarily the worst thing in the world. Like, we'd have to get more games tested to see if that is actually a problem, because not only did Newt repost it in this situation, although you can kind of try to imagine what a player who is a little bit more acclimatized to using Protoss to harass in those ways than Hamster currently is, would do in that situation. By the way, we have Architects coming for a little bit more dedicated siege power. And, you know, that's another thing that you'd have to worry about, right? But, like, if you can't claim this base, then it can be used against you. That's a valid concern. These 2 gateways are a significant chunk, at least a non-trivial chunk, of Hamster's production. And so losing those is actually going to be a little bit of an awkward situation. He adds one gateway back at home preemptively and slowly saturating his third base. But again, the worker count is almost double right now for Newt. He's been producing really heavily. More and more units rallying across are going to need to be error corrected. Losing a Hierophant, decent chunk of Vespene, just for nothing. In fact, if you total up a lot of the resources here for what Hamster lost on the come-up, this could be pretty bad. Now, there is a massive amount of Goliaths storming the front because of the worker count that Newt was able to climb up to. And they are able to try and at least get a lot of damage dealt. The Acantor is going to be dead, not able to stutter step backwards. Architect from the high ground, another one is on the way, but it's only halfway done. There's not really any meat to this army. Trying to commit heavy onto the shuttle, or the envoy as it is. Dropping it back, drawing them in. If there were zealots or something coming out of the gateways, this could be a really big play, but it looks like the Architect is going to die, and that is going to be GG. A very long and hard-fought match, but Newt just ends up taking it. There was a lot of attempts from Hamster to try to do some early aggression there, and it feels like he was pretty close to maybe breaking his opponent. But nonetheless, you know, Newt was able to survive. So we love to see that. Let's see what happens in game numero dos. And we are on Axiom. Hamster in the top right. Newt in the bottom left. This is a map by BittyB, also the author of Derelict. Both of those maps now in our Empire class pool, which, by the way, just means that the map is fit for purpose for competitive maps. Doesn't necessarily mean that every map in that pool or in that folder will be a part of the next tournament, but right now we don't have so many of the maps, so yeah, odds are if you see one there, it will be. I'm very excited for our next tournament because we do have a number of players, including these two, that are going to be participating in it, and I could foresee a world where it is like the FFA requirement rings true or something, where we need to use that rule for the tiebreaker. But I'm not sure. We'll see. You know, that requires all three players to win 2 games and just like back-to-back, so all their scores at the end are 2-2. And there's no clear favorite as a result. But anyway, right now, Hamster looking to get on the board in this set. Technically, you know, he won the game that wasn't meant to be submitted, and he lost the first 2 that I was mentioning that were much more all-in-y from Newt. So he's trying some different adaptations. So I guess in broad strokes, he has gone on the board, and he's now, you know, 3-1 in favor of Newt. But we'll see how the actual, like the legitimate score goes. You know, something I've noticed is that Hamster really likes to try to chase the worker. And, oh, he got very close to being able to pick it off. Oh, no, he selected wrong. Man, if only he knew which one was actually wounded. But thinks better of it, doesn't want to finish the job there. Going Lattice first. So clearly Hamster is interested in experimenting a little bit here, trying to slow the growth of the Terran, since this Fulcrum into Quarry build has been proven to be just quite, I would say, quite potent. But obviously the first Vulture coming out, I actually don't know where it's going. Maybe it was sharking around looking to see if it could find any, you know, hidden scribes or proxies, indeed. So this is a version of Axiom before I expanded a lot of the ramps, so it will actually be a little bit harder to, or I guess a little bit easier, rather, to hold things like ground attacks. A little bit harder for ground units to make it up here and pressure, but also harder for big ground armies that you make in the main to pop out. So I've contributed towards this map's development a little bit by doing that, but obviously the layout is pretty much all BittyB. I didn't make too many structural changes. Seeing the vassals early on has dissuaded any Vulture run-bys, which is a little bit odd, because I would think that I would see this, and I see, like, vassals approaching, and I would think to myself, hey, I should just pop off, you know, a couple Vultures into the main, see if I can kill a couple scribes. But it doesn't look like Newt wants to do that. Because you have to realize that, like, the vassals are going to take a long time to kill any unit that has more than, like, 50 health, right? Especially at this count of vassals. It's not a huge number. No rescout happening from Hamster, but he's going for a faster expansion. So as the worker count starts to increase for Newt, we will eventually see that normalize. There's a period of time, obviously, if your opponent has a second worker production queue before you do, that you kind of need a third production queue or some worker harassment to get even, right? And here's the Vulture coming in for a scout. I don't think it's going to be able to do any damage since it has taken a lot already. But, you know, maybe he can get a mine off. There you go. Slows down the mining for 3 seconds. Not really a huge loss, obviously. But it's something. It is something. A bit of a swarm of bees coming out of Hamster. This is where Shambler requests that I change lattice to apiary, but it makes more than just the bees. Rogue Gallery back. Okay, we're going to see the Barghest Vassal play out of Hamster. So this is an interesting one. So the Barghest was revised recently to, when it is decloaked, it provides +1 armor pen to all units nearby. And, you know, the enemy of, maybe not vassals per se, because they don't really have a lot of damage anyway, but one of the things that can help scale versus them in these early stages of the fights is armor. So the Goliath will natively take 4 damage instead of 6, because there's no armor pen on the vassal, and the Goliath has 2 armor. That's just one way to put it. Another way to put it is like the Ministry has 4 armor. So when you see that, you think to yourself, okay, I've got 4 armor, I'm going to take 2 damage from the vassal. Well, if you get 4 Barghests, each one is +1 armor pen, well, suddenly the Ministry will take 6 damage, and that is a pretty significant change. Nexus is about to be pressured. It doesn't look like any workers were sent over there. I saw some transfers back as the Goliaths attempt to pressure, but there are 14 vassals, so it does feel like this is going to be more than enough, even without the Barghest. Now, cycling back, a little bit of micro over here is helping out Newt, but yeah, this is a pretty heavy committal into the vassal, and he didn't make any Cyclops for crowd control, so you can just kind of stack up and kind of confuse the Goliath. You know, the right-clicking can't be as precise. So I think that was a little bit of a misread out of Newt. He is going to end up losing a lot of Goliaths, and there are still 10 vassals with more coming, as well as a Barghest. So now sticking it out in the middle of the map with 2 Goliaths. We've got 2 more on the way. This does not look good for Newt. He has 3 Watchdogs, so that's not too bad, but he's behind in tempo now because obviously he idled his worker production a little bit to afford all of those combat units, and now is in a situation where his opponent has a Nexus up, is going to be able to extend the lead in terms of worker count because we do have an embassy on the way. And now the air units are moving across. Now, getting a little bit awkwardly spaced here, and you can see the Barghest is starting to be focused down a little bit there, lost its shields, but it doesn't look like that's going to be enough. And so there you have it. We got a bit of a pull over here with a bunch of Masons. They're going to try to repair these Goliaths so they can stay alive long enough. This is actually a great move from Newt because he has limited resources on that front. And so that is going to actually ward off this sort of angry horde of air units that has been elected by Hamster. We still don't see any Cyclops, though, or Cyprians for that matter, but he has a stockade, so maybe he'll change up the tact a little bit. Hamster thinking about his next set of acquisitions. Has a lot of minerals. What is he thinking? Let's see what he's going for. Maybe nothing yet. Maybe he's just gonna keep on keeping on. Now the rallies are again a little bit misplaced, so his vassals are gonna reveal the scout. There's actually a Mason pull with this. So we were talking about 6 workers, 3 Goliaths. Obviously, oh no, the Barghest is coming. I mean, okay, so as long as it doesn't attack, it's actually safe, and it just ends up being like a pseudo witness, which is pretty funny. But we are going to see Watchdogs be put down on the low ground. And that will really make this sort of force quite difficult to deal with, right? Because you can put down like 3 Watchdogs, have the other 3 on repair duties. It looks like maybe he's not even going to do that. Okay, now starting the Watchdogs on the back. The Scribes are pulled. They are going to get the armor pen as well, thanks to the Barghests. One of them does go down. There's still one more there. Not able to repair this Goliath in time. So it looks like he didn't bring enough Goliaths, but we got 2 more coming. That Watchdog going to be focused down next. Not actually going to be canceled, but it's not a huge amount of resources anyway. Still 4 workers here for repairs, targeting that left-hand Goliath. I think it might just be enough, but here comes a Charlatan to 1.5x the damage dealt. Doesn't matter, though, because there's not much damage to multiply. Needs more units coming out of these vassals. Got nothing on the ground besides Scribes. Now we can set up more Watchdogs during the back end. A Cleric moving out to heal the Goliaths a lot more reliably, as well as, of course, second Goliath or third Goliath now. An anchor being started. That's going to take a bit longer, so obviously that can be focused down. We are going to see a bit of a surround over here. Getting a lot of value out of the Charlatan over here. Don't be fooled. That does significantly improve the damage. And now we're going to see that second Goliath fall. But he didn't focus down the guy making the anchor. He's got to do that because the anchor's going to finish, and then the Goliath's going to get in it. That's going to extend how much damage is dealt. The Charlatan will undoubtedly end up dying here if he's not careful. He's still in range. There it goes. It's out. But okay, at the very least, the Goliath is going to be zoned away. We still don't have any ground units. Need to get back to saturation on that third. Economics still in favor of Hamster. No wardens got put down, no defenses at all. He held that with workers and vassals and the one Charlatan, which did actually give him a huge amount of value. We got a Stargate coming. It's sky tossed the whole way through, except for that Charlatan. That was the only ground combat unit that was actually made right now. Artisan here to add more Vespene to the punch. Finally putting some pylons down here, realizing the pressure is not over. Needs to add more and more vassals to the mix. Maybe focus down some of the stuff like the clerics. Here comes the Barghest, though. That's going to significantly empower this army versus what we have. Remember, dealing 5 damage instead of 4 every single time you hit that. Huge stun on the workers, but I don't think it's going to be enough, right? The Vulture's already dead, and I think that's the end of the push. Newt does have a second base up and running, but still not really getting the right units, right? Still no Cyclops, still no Cyprian. Just thinks, no, Bio sucks. The only thing you make is clerics, right? That's the only thing you make out of the stockade. Maybe a shaman, or maybe Hurakan sometimes. I tell you, though, Cyclops would have won this a long time ago. You can ask Nablime. He's a certified Cyclops fan. No gas being harvested at the third, by the way. That's pretty funny. Artisan awaiting orders onto the geyser. When you right-click in the Fog of War, it doesn't actually task the worker or the harvest order. We were thinking about maybe enabling that. The only concern I have there is that you can drill without actually having vision. But that whole mechanic is just a little bit wacky anyway, so it probably doesn't make a huge difference. But regardless, something to think about. Something to consider. Like, the whole idea is invisible, right? Like, you wouldn't be able to expect players to, like, intuitively think, oh, I should, drill to make my workers not collide, and that will allow me to pop open stuff, right? But nonetheless, that is something to consider. We still have, I can't believe this air focus that's happened here. The Charlatan must have been a misbuy. Exemplar coming, so that's going to help deal with the Goliaths and the Clerics, splash a bunch of stuff. And it's also from a safe-ish range, where obviously the Gladius and other options have to get within attack range of the Goliaths. But it might not matter, because we do have the Barghests here. There's 3 of them now, so overkill on the armor pen versus the Goliath. This is an interesting strategy. Again, I do think Newt could have just, killed this a lot easier with Cyclops, but he might still stand a pretty good chance here. Trying to focus things down, a couple salvos. It's taking a lot longer now to get rid of some of these Goliath HPs. But I think it might just be working. The Barghest's still doing strong, holding strong. We got another Goliath coming out here. And is it going to be enough? That's the real question. The Barghests are all gone. Now it's just the raw vassal. And that's not going to be able to outdamage the heal from the cleric. I think Newt might go up another game in this set, depending on if he can scale his economy. Hamster, behind all of this, has so many minerals, he's not actually spending his money. He's refocusing his attention. And we just saw an A-move issue because we saw Newt move his camera up here. Now we've got a synthetic synod. Okay, it's going to be Empresses to join this, I suppose. We do have the one Exemplar somewhere. Yeah, okay, don't want to have that. It's a very slow-moving unit, so if you have it get caught in the middle, it's just such a mess. Adding the gas cap to the natural, spending some of his many minerals, and adding a couple of Wardens, but it's 30 seconds for those to finish. 35, actually, but, I was counting on my speech carrying us through the first 5 seconds. Now, the Goliaths are going to march up here. There's not actually that many of them, so I think this attack force is going to be held. The Exemplar gets focused down. I don't know, because the Barghest gets focused down next. There's still one of them hidden in here. It's actually underneath this big stack of vassals. So that's going to be enough for this push to at least be short-circuited initially, but more Goliaths are coming. Now the Barghest is async. It can be focused down. Newt not necessarily paying the most of attention, but there it goes. That's going to make it so that it's a lot harder to bust down these Goliaths. And now the vassals have to fall back. More and more Barghests being made, but only off of one rogue gallery. Synod almost done. Now the Wardens have finished, so he's bought enough time. Watchdogs being added. Newt is probably... This is the most Sky Toss you've ever seen. Like, this is the most Sky you've ever seen a Sky Toss, I guess is what I'm saying. There's... He's made 4 different production structures to make more air units. The Empress can come out of that. The Clarion can come out of that. No, it's a Demiurge. Okay, he actually doesn't want to stick to Sky Toss. Coming down here to use the Reservoir. If he can get access to it. Now, Watchdogs are starting to be put up here, but there's not that many actual Goliaths. A little bit of flub to fire. He could have focused down that Goliath a lot sooner. The Barghest is hidden in there somewhere. Yeah, it's over here on the right. But instead, the Watchdog was refocused onto the Exemplar. And now I think the push has indeed fallen apart here. Falling back. Seeing what he can do. Honestly, the Demiurges could be huge in this situation, right? Like, think about it. Lattice is coming online. Adding more vassals. It's such a wacky game that, you wouldn't necessarily think this is what you're going to see. But, okay, the Artisan moving across. Remember, these don't build structures anymore. They just harvest resources and return them immediately. So this one is... Where is that headed? Okay, he's actually shift queued it around. So he's going to start harvesting from that reservoir as well. So that's going to give him a lot of extra Vespene. The Demiurge... Let me just pull it up for you, okay? Because I can't remember off the top of my head. But the Demiurge, I'm pretty sure... 350 Vespene per pop. So this unit is so gas heavy that, like, realistically, what are you going to do, right? So we do have the Fulcrums pounding out Goliaths. It does feel, again, Cyclops are a missed opportunity. Oh, he might have put this treasury down a little bit off center there. And he's got another one up over in this situation, but his Atlas is finished, yet he has no, defenses up over here, and the Demiurge is going to start attacking from a range. That's going to allow the Vassals to engage over here. He's trying to focus the Demiurge down. He should be able to get it, but now he's starting to snipe down the Barghests instead. The Exemplar returns. Demiurge now popping. Okay, now we can focus down the Exemplar, and it'll just be the Vassals that need to be dealt with. Okay, the Exemplar actually escaping there is a pretty big deal for Hamster. The Cleric sort of blindly walking out here is actually going to reveal a lot of those units, so... Oh, darting around. Oh, hey, wait a second. Woman, you're out of territory. You're out of line. Okay, she's dead. Well, we do have another Demiurge coming. Witness, okay, finally using that embassy for something other than the worker types. I guarantee you, dude, like, if we could get, like, a specific, the same way we have damage taken, if we could get, like, resources returned, these artisans would have a pretty next level amount by the end of the game. Huge value add. Definitely pays for themselves. They do cost Vespine. Thinking about taking 9 o'clock. Newt trying to get up to a 4th base. This is going to be a ministry because he recognizes he can get sniped a lot easier than it might seem. 12 o'clock is up, actually, for Hamster, but he's not saturating it just yet. Instead, trying to keep his money low, adding some golems into the fight. So we will have a front line. There is another Demiurge. We don't have a third one coming. Third overall, obviously. Right now, he's down 1. There's actually a Charlatan with this force, so that's pretty neat. Watchdogs galore. This almost feels like a euthermal challenge build, but obviously the presence of ground units obviously does change that a little bit. Again, no splash out of Newt this whole time. He started to add Valkyries. That's going to be really good versus the Vassals, but there is still the Demiurge. It could have been focus firing that Valkyrie to turn it against his opponent, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. Because again, the Goliaths are the big heavy hitters versus air. The Exemplars can't attack air, but now here come the Masons trying their best to see if they can riposte the Demiurge assaults. It's not going to be enough. The Goliath has been taken over. The Valkyrie's been taken over. Going to get shot out of the sky. This one stunned and will eventually return back to its former user. You can see it there. So the Demiurge basically applies an on-hit debuff that when the... it takes like 10 seconds or so before the victim is returned to their... well, rather, it takes 10 seconds to control it. And yeah, I think this is actually going to just break Newt. He doesn't have that many forces over there. He's been making Gorgons. So I guess his hope is that he can use air units of his own to his advantage. He's got the one Valkyrie out. Watchdog shelling the Barghest. That's not going to provide any armor pen. But there's no ground forces, right? He's got to fall back, pull his workers away. 9 o'clock is set up, but there's no workers at it. Treasury is going to be given over to Hamster now. But he will need to make I don't think it's going to be able to make a quarry. Oh, no, it's to say he has to move closer to it. Yeah, there you go. Hey, he can take the reservoir and then harvest from it using his artisans. That's pretty funny. Okay, over here we have another engagement. The Demiurges may have been up to no good. Falling backwards into the choke. This might be a little bit faster than Hamster needs to be. He was just adding another tech structure. I didn't see what it was, but Clerics trying their best to heal the Goliaths. I think that's just going to be it. I don't see how Hamster can possibly end up dropping this match. A second synthetic Synod, that's what it was. Adding 2 more Demiurges now. Valkyrie trying its best. Could have been made a lot sooner to deal with this horde, but instead, the air army continues. And the Demiurge is just shelling out consistent damage. It's not the best damage, but it's still enough, and it's from a long enough range that if you don't have artillery like phalanxes, which of course, why would you build phalanxes against the air units? By the way, Madrigals might have been a pretty good shout here, thinking about it, but yeah, they're starting to shell in. They can close the gap. There's 4 of them now, and each successive hit drops the timer of controlling it by another second. And so that is going to be it. Newt, no GG out of him. He's not happy with how that game went. But we've got more coming. So stay tuned to see if Hamster can get more than just 1 dub on the board. And yeah, we got 4 more matches to go through. So I'm excited to see them. We'll take a look at the score screen, and then we'll see you guys off. Thanks for joining us for this match, and catch you guys later.